The Tao of Self-Confidence, Episode 172.
Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of courageous women finding their inner journey to self-confidence 5 days a week. Want to learn how you can change your inner beliefs and attitudes? Download a free copy of the ebook by visiting thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Well, hello friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap-Chan, and today I have a phenomenal woman. She is the host of the Distance podcast, and I'm just excited to have her on and share her story about self-confidence. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Wailin Wong. Wailin, how are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to our listeners.
Sure. Hi, Sheena. Thanks for having me on. My name is Wailin Wong. I currently live just outside Chicago. And as far as my background goes, I was born and raised in the western suburbs of Chicago. And I went to journalism school at Northwestern University. And when I graduated, my first job out of school I was a financial reporter in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And so I did that for a few years. And then I moved to New York for the same company and kept being a financial reporter. And then I took a job with the Chicago Tribune back in my hometown and my hometown paper as a business reporter covering technology and startups. And then a couple years ago, I was hired by a Chicago software company called Basecamp to work on what essentially is a passion project of the CEOs, it was first a long-form written publication, and now it's a podcast called The Distance, which does stories about businesses that are at least 25 years old. So I've gone from print journalism to podcasting, which has been really fun. And I don't live where I grew up, but I live in a different suburb of Chicago called Oak Park, which is really nice. And I'm married and we have a 3-year-old daughter.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all that info. And what's your cultural background?
My parents are Chinese. My mom was born and raised in Hong Kong, and my dad is from the southern part of China, so he's also Cantonese speaking and moved to Hong Kong when he was little. Each of them immigrated separately to the U.S. in the late 60s and met in undergrad at Southern Illinois University. And so my parents have been in Illinois/the Chicago area since they came to the U.S. And my older brother and I are the first generation born here in the U.S.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And Wailin, what would be your favorite self-confidence quote?
My favorite self-confidence quote actually comes from my dad. It's something that he said to me many, many years ago at an internship I had, where I'm sure I called home in tears talking about how dumb I felt at this internship and how I was going to be fired. And he said it to me in Chinese, and I'll say it in English. But the way I would translate it is this. He said, if they have the audacity to hire you, you should have the audacity to do the job. And what he meant by that was that he knew that I'm a diligent person, that I work hard, that I worked hard to get that internship, and that I deserve to be there. And so he was saying that you should just be bold and do the work and feel good about the work you're doing and feel like you're there for a purpose and that they want you there, and that, you should draw on the resources you have to do the work you've been assigned. And so I've carried that with me through, every internship I had after that and every job change.
Awesome. And thanks for sharing that quote. And I think too, as women, we just feel like we're not enough when really we are more than enough. And it's just, believing in ourselves, believing in our abilities to go out there and just do our thing. So Wailin, what would be, in your own words, your definition of self-confidence?
I think self-confidence is about being secure in your ability to get stuff done. And for me anyway, self-confidence doesn't necessarily need to come from some deep reservoir within yourself. I think that you can get confidence in yourself from a lot of other sources, whether that be your family, your friends, your support network, your professional mentors, from your faith. As a Christian, I believe that I'm a child of God, that I'm fully loved and accepted no matter what. And I think having that belief and carrying that with me is actually really liberating, because it frees me from being always completely obsessed with what other people think about me, because I know that I'm already kind of fully loved and accepted for who I am. And that kind of in turn, I think, can inform the way I approach a lot of the things I do. So self-confidence, yeah, again, is about just feeling like you can do what's been set before you, feeling like you can accomplish your goals. And again, it doesn't need to come from just like you in a room thinking about how confident you are. You can kind of draw strength from a lot of different places.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that definition. And Wailin, what was your life like before your discovery of self-confidence?
I think I'm still discovering self-confidence in a lot of different ways. I think that this kind of thing is a kind of like a lifelong process. Maybe some people are, self-confident from the get-go as children. I'm definitely not one of those people. But I think that as I've built up a body of work, because a lot of times I think about self-confidence mostly in a professional lens, through a professional lens. I, think about the body of work I've developed over, 10 plus years of being a business journalist. And I think that with each story, with each, year that passes, I can look back at the body of work that I've created and been like, I know how to tell a story. I know how to talk to sources. I know how to find information. And I think that before I got to that point, it was always this nerve-wracking thing of like, having to pick up the phone and feeling like, oh, I'm so dumb. Everyone knows more than I do, or like I don't have the authority to call this person and ask for information that I need for a story. It was always feeling really insecure, like everyone was doing me a huge favor just by talking to me, which sometimes is true in my world, but a lot of times it's like, I'm doing a job, they're doing a job, and like we are on the same professional level. And I think it took me a while to get to that point.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And, what was that point in your life when you realized you can go out there and, go the distance, get what you want, go out there and call somebody, for a report, or, what was that point in your life when your self-confidence started to really like go to the next level?
I think that it probably started to gel a little bit when I was at the Tribune. By then I had already, been at my previous job, Dow Jones Newswires, where I'd done a lot of reporting. And I remember even before I had been at the Tribune for a while, I remember at my job interview for the Tribune, I had gone and really prepared for it. And I was out to lunch with the editors who were interviewing me for this position. And one really common question that you get asked at journalism job interviews is, like, what are some story ideas? Like, pitch us some stories that you would write if you got this job. And so I remember pitching them a few ideas I had for the beat I was interviewing for, which was technology. And I remember the editor kind of laughing a little bit. We were at lunch and he said, "That sounds amazing. Can you go back to the newsroom and write that for us right now?" And I remember feeling really good about that. I remember feeling like, I prepared really hard for this interview. I have decent amount of experience already. I think I deserve this job. And I remember that being like a good feeling. And then as I got further along in my reporting and covering this beat and going around and meeting a lot of people and just kind of making contacts in the community I was covering, I would like go to events and people would be like, "Oh, hey, Wailin, like I read your story," or like, someone told me that like if I want to get covered, if I want coverage for my startup, that like you're the person to talk to, because I was like at that time, one of the few technology reporters in town. So I feel like those are some of the moments I had along the way where I started to feel like, you know what, like I am actually building up a decent body of knowledge about the subject I'm covering. Like I started to shed that kind of imposter feeling, and I was like, yeah, I'm starting to like kind of own this topic a little bit. And that was a good feeling.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And, sometimes it's great to have that feeling, right? And I know having that imposter feeling is just probably like something we all go through. Like we feel like we're not as confident as we are, and we feel like we're not being authentic when really, it's just a feeling, and that feeling can go away. And as you see when people see your value, that's when you can start building that confidence and keep on going, kind of like what you did when you went for your interview and they loved your idea that you pitched, and you just kept on going from there. So, after that, what's your life been like now?
Well, the imposter syndrome thing is, I think, still something I struggle with. It just kind of bubbles up in new ways. And so, for example, when we when I took on my new job, I was basically starting a publication from scratch. So that was really intimidating because I didn't really know how to do that. And then I was in charge of, audience development and kind of coming up with like an overall vision for how this thing was going to look. And then we transitioned the distance from a written publication to a podcast. And I'd never done any audio before. I'd never gone out and done field reporting with a microphone. I'd never done an audio interview, any of that stuff. And so I kind of, in some ways, like started from scratch again with my self-confidence in that regard. And I was like, ugh, like I'm just faking it. Like I'm just play acting at being an audio journalist. Like I don't know what I'm doing. And, I think my journey is still kind of ongoing in that respect. But then I kind of go back and I think, okay, like I know that I know the fundamentals. I know the fundamentals of reporting. I know the fundamentals of information gathering, of fact checking, like all the really basic building blocks I need to do my job. Like I know I have them. And so I try to kind of almost compartmentalize like how I'm feeling like an imposter. It's like, okay, I'm feeling like an imposter because I don't have this specific set of skills, but it's a set of skills I can learn, and like what can I do to learn the set of skills I need while knowing confidently that like I know how to do this other stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree. So, I mean, it's just having that knowledge or seeking the knowledge or the resources for you to become that expert or become knowledgeable in that area, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, some of self-confidence, I think maybe a lot of self-confidence is just having the presence of mind to seek out the resources you need and to be humble enough to say, okay, this is what I need. Like, 'cause I think the worst kind of self-doubt is the really paralyzing kind where you're like, I'm such a failure or I'm so incompetent that like I'm just going to wallow in this feeling and I'm not going to do anything about it. Like that is a very kind of debilitating kind of insecurity. And so I try not to let my insecurities debilitate me. I just try to approach them from a more practical standpoint and say, well, okay, is there a class I can take? Is there someone I can email and, take them out for coffee and ask them about XYZ? Or like, is there someone else at my company who can help me with this? And can I just, shoot them an IM and ask if they can chat sometime? I think it's about like turning your kind of anxiety into some practical steps you can take.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, Wailin. And, to the woman who's listening to your episode, she may be in her own journey to self-confidence. What would be that one tip you would give to her?
My one tip would be don't be too concerned with what other people think about you. And I've always been a people pleaser. This is something my mom has said to me since I was a little girl that, oh, you're always so concerned about pleasing other people, what other people think. And it's taken me a long time to let go of that. I think I'm still working on it. But especially in a professional setting, I think that the amount of time that you, and I mean you in like a general sense, like a young, diligent, thoughtful, professional woman at the beginning of her journey, the amount of time that you spend obsessing over, for example, like what your boss thinks about you is this like huge amount compared to what is probably like the infinitesimal amount that your boss spends actually thinking about you. I think it's like gets really blown out of proportion. You think that like this one line you used in an email was like super awkward and your boss is just in his office thinking about how awkward you are. Because I've definitely been in situations like that. And I think it's like just really helpful to take a step back and be like, you know what? Like people have complicated lives. Your boss is probably managing lots of other people and his own life. There's lots of stuff going on. It's like, it's okay. He's probably not thinking about it. You just like go do your work to the best of your ability and try to like not sweat the small stuff.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that tip. And I think that's something we all go through, being concerned of what others think. Especially with Asian women, we've been ingrained in our heads to like, be careful of what you do because people might laugh at you or people might think you're nuts. And, as time goes by, we can learn to let go of that and just be free and do what we want to do in life. So great tip. And if our listeners want to get to know a little bit more about you and what you do, is there any links or social media profiles we can connect with?
Sure. So if you want to listen to the podcast, you can find it at thedistance.com. We're also on iTunes if you search for The Distance. The Distance is on Twitter at Distance Mag, Distance MAG. I am on Twitter at Velocity Wong. And the company that funds the podcast is called Basecamp. So you can find them at basecamp.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Wailin, you can also head on over to the taoofselfconfidence.com and search for Wailin's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else we talked about. And I really just want to thank Wailin for taking the time to share her story with us. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Sheena. This was a lot of fun.
It was an honor to have you on. So listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Tao of Self-Confidence. Visit thetaoofselfconfidence.com for links to everything we chatted about today, as well as killer resources, gifts, and so much more. Subscribe to the Tao of Self-Confidence on iTunes or Stitcher to hear more stories of amazing women finding their inner journey to self-confidence.